Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor DeLorenzo. I'm going to read a poem by Martin Jack Rosenblum from his collection called Home. But before I do that, I just wanted to say one quick thing, which was there was something I would kid Marty about from time to time, and that was even though I was enamored with his great skills as an educator and as a professor, I kept trying to push him for a better position at UWM simply for my own selfish reason that I always want to refer to him as Dean Martin. The logs. 1. When I had not grown yet in Appleton, Wisconsin, there were railroad tracks across the river from our house. My problem was to catch some fish in the Fox River and then go over to the railroad tracks for a walk. If I could not make it to the railroad tracks, I would have to go over to the cemetery, which was closer to my house and on the same side of the river. I would listen to the switch engines on the other side of the river. I would not see the engines. The piles of logs hid them. 2. On the train to my uncle's funeral, I imagined the Chicago Northwestern was traveling behind those logs, piles of them. Once my mother and I got to Chicago, I would walk around where I was, walking was where my wife lived, and I did not know it then, but those logs fell the winter after my uncle's death. When I caught a carp, I threw it back. Carps are scavengers, or we bought our fish. When I caught a crayfish, I threw it back. Crayfish have a disease, and everyone in Appleton knew it. My father would come home at night. He had a store, and I worked sometimes, but under his basement steps it was dark, where I had to walk with the empty boxes and garbage. I did not like to fish. 3. March is soon, 1971. When Maureen and I visit her mother in Chicago, I often walk a few blocks from the house, following the sidewalk as I did then, and I remember under the Pacific Street Bridge, there was dry sand that was cool in June. Our basement was cool in June. In June, heat rises from the Fox River. The fish jump higher, the sewage rots, and I remember staying in the basement or under the bridge until I could make it to the river. Now March is soon, and ice cracks from one end of the Fox Valley to the other, but I remember one winter when the sound of logs spilling into the Fox River woke me up dreaming. Now I am, made me hesitate for spring. Those logs fell into that river, and those switch engines almost went crazy trying to get them out. 4. About the time my father was leaving Sweden for America, my mother's father swam across the Fox River before work. My father went back to Sweden, but Appleton got him by then. Grandfather never went back to Russia. About the time my father headed for the Midwest, my mother had a puppy, and armless Arnie lived in a shack he would leave every spring. Armless Arnie rescued that puppy when it fell into the Fox River. I used to see the shack fill with water in the spring, and I used to wonder if he got wet when he was living. On the ship to Sweden, I heard the ocean slap. On the ship back to America, I felt a storm at sea and decided it was faster than the spring thaw along the Fox River. In the spring, the Fox River spreads into the Riverside Cemetery, the cut trees, across the river on dry land soak. The fir trees in the cemetery have water crawling on them in spring, and they soak. But the uncut trees grew darker, and the switch engines, cranes leaning from them, lifted the logs from piles into the paper mill. When spring came, the riverside cemetery would lose the fog it held in fall, and the ice that hung on the sides of grave markers, trees in winter, would run into the river in spring. The uncut trees across the river of dry land soak the sea, sprayed me. Armless Arnie's shack was torn down for a sewer pipe, so the Fox River in spring never got it. 5. The sea was the sound I heard as I walked or ran from the river up Lemonwa Hill to reach the cemetery. I have forced my feet beneath the mud on the bank of the Fox River. Or do these logs and factory gears make up the sea? I walked by the sea, and no cemetery air made the clouds sink. I believe this way the future, and it was, and I forgot the logs, and it was not an I returned as the cemetery markers do for their own to my hearing now. Is the time the snow melts and runs to the Fox River. 6. Last night before I went to bed, my wife said, the turtle in our aquarium was dead, wrapping it up for garbage. I even remembered trying to write a poem when I was in high school. I saw this when I was in grade school about some guys who clubbed a turtle over the head as it crawled out of the Fox River until it died. I wrote about how my falling through the ice over that river in 1960 felt like I was clubbed, like that turtle. When I fell through the ice, I had to pull at the ice chunks to get myself out. When I got myself home, I got warm. I got warm enough. 7. And the dream I had last night about saying those words, making waves, break over an entire city, is no louder than the sound of logs spilling into the Fox River. And the sound of logs spilling into the Fox River woke me up, and no one in Appleton, Wisconsin knew it but me. I did not wake up last night. 8. The Fox River Valley stretches in Appleton, Wisconsin. In my wife's belly ova crawl, now alone. Starving for my voice, starving for his voice. A child along the bottom of that river. A child listens for poetry strung from muck. I wonder what children we pick for our name. Good night, Marty. I love you madly. Have a pleasant journey wherever you're off to. Thank you.